criminalise themselves, to go across that line. I mentioned before about the idea that we see these films as detective stories, detective films. I think if we looked across Noir, we'd see that the detective, because of Humphrey Bogart et al., we have that perhaps as the main idea of a noir figure. But in fact, in many, many films, it is not. It's the insurance salesman, as I mentioned. It is in Pitfall, another insurance salesman, that the writers obviously thought that insurance salesmen stood for people who would not transgress. So we have, and sorry, apologies, so we're selling insurance. People might look at you differently from now on. But of course it became silence as the genre moved on. Cornell Woolrich, if you get a chance to read his fiction, I think it is absolutely superb. I think he is the greatest writer for creating suspense. And one of his stories, I'm not going to give away too much, but it's I Married a Dead Man, which grabs your interest straight away. And it's about a woman who is pregnant, she's on a train, she's being thrown out by her boyfriend, she's got no future. There's a train accident. Before the accident, she has befriended a rather wealthy woman who is also pregnant, and she meets her husband. They become friends. The husband and the wife die. This woman survives. Just before the accident, the other woman was washing her hands, gave her a ring to put on. So after the accident, it's assumed that she is the survivor. And that's what often happens in noir too, where you have what appears to be an innocent misunderstanding suddenly becomes something that darkens the whole story. This is because it's sort of the idea of, do I have enough weapons? And she is ready for anything. And sorry, this was just total self-indulgence. It is one of the Black Masks series, but to give a sense there of a radical view of crime, and also I suppose crime is entertainment. How this translates to film is that suddenly the film producers are more interested in what goes on in the mind of people who do bad things. Mentioned Raymond Chandler, and just two quotes here that I think Chandler is interesting because he writes about the process, or what crime fiction is about. And he also is trying to give it some sense of respectability. He believes there's something worthwhile in crime fiction. Interestingly, I noticed there's one of the books there, Albert Camus' The Outsider. Albert Camus, a French existential writer, novelist, playwright. He attributed much of his style of writing to Chandler. He believed that Chandler led the way in terms of how to approach mid-20th century writing. So Chandler, talking about Dashiell Hammett, says Dashiell Hammett gave murder back to the kind of people who committed for reasons, not just to provide a cause. He put these people down on paper as they were, and he made them talk and think in the language they customarily used for these purposes. And then later on, possibly it was the smell of fear which these stories seemed to generate. Their characters lived in a world gone wrong, a world in which civilization had created the machinery of its own destruction, and was using it with all the moronic delight of a gangster trying out his first machine gun. The law was something to be manipulated for profit and power. The streets were dark with something more than night. That last line has resonated with lots of film critics because many books have actually been titled something more than night. Chandler was articulating here that sense that the noir environment is dark, and it is not just simply the shadows, the fact that these events occur at night. It is something to do with a darkness that is within the human spirit, which is not always recognised. And importantly, Noir says this occurs within the community. It's not something outside, it is directly within. Okay, just to flip through with pieces. With Noir, we think of the look. What does it look like? And immediately, Mitchum and Jane Greer from Out of the Past. Well, it's obviously the quit campaign didn't quite take off in the 40s. Cigarettes are important as a visual. Well, we can talk about all sorts of sexual meanings and significances there as well. But in noir, in black and white, it's the visual. And so smoke, against that contrast in light, creates something for the audience. Noir very much exists in that dark and light world, the combination of the two. And so we alternate between that as we view the characters. That with all characters, there is always an element of dark. In the film Out of the Past, it is Robert Mitchum's past that catches up. Double Indemnity, and it should be Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck, but I've got a feeling this is probably a publicity shot and someone else standing in. The things that some people have to do. Again, what's perceived there is the light, the difference between the light and the dark. Thank God for Venetians with film noir, because Venetians create that noir landscape. Here, again, Double Indemnity, Fred McMurray, Walter Neff. He has, at this stage, committed murder. He's killed Phyllis's husband. And Barton Keyes is his employer. And so we have McMurray in that Venetian light. Keyes is the good guy, one of the few good guys, stands out. He is lit, totally famous. Okay, sorry, can we get back?
Sorry.
No, it's not a problem. Apologies for rushing this. It is the sense of a funnel. There's a lot of information and a lot of sense of what noir is about, and we're trying to fit that in with time. The city, although, again, with noir, we have that sense of a broad view of society. The playground for the noir characters is the city streets. And many films begin with an overview of the city, and then moving to a street, and then often moving to a tenant, a flat. So that the city becomes the place where all people interact. And in a way, it's a battle for the city between those who are the criminals and those people who are the good guys. But again, this is made more complex because you can't rely on the police force in noir because they're most likely in the pay of the criminals. We also have the sense in a wonderful film called The Rat, where crime is business. So the syndicate moves into an unnamed city and they set up shop, but it's a business. They have accountants, they have board meetings, etc. And in that particular film, the police force and the judges are all in the pay of the syndicate. And so the battle is for one or two good police to try and do something about it. The sense of, just moving from the city to the detective, often the main character in a noir film, but as I say, there are many other protagonists as well. The detective is usually someone who is flawed in some way. Their interaction with the characters involved in a noir plot is always compromised. They either fall for the girl who's we can perhaps be aware is not quite what she appears to be. They're usually hard-bitten characters. They're sometimes ex-cops who have been sickened by the corruption, so they therefore try and do something on their own to get rid of the corruption that they see around them. There's a great quote from a film called The Dark Corner, which, just for it's a sort of a curious point, and there's lots of these about noir. The main female part is played by Lucille Ball. So if you're familiar with I Love Lucy, and Lucy Ball was the comic actress. She has this devastating role in The Dark Corner, in a very serious characterisation. But the main detective in that, Brad Galt, who spends most of his time completely unaware of what he's up against. And one of the quotes from the film is, "I feel all dead inside. I'm backed into a dark corner, and I don't know who's hitting me." And it's really not until the last 3 minutes of the film that we become aware, he becomes aware, and we become aware of the true nature of the situation and what he's up against. Which leads us to the film fatale. And again, I think that if we talk about noir, we often have that sense of the fatal woman, the woman who, like Eve, leads for men astray. I don't think it actually works. I think that there are figures in noir films who are female and who lead to the destruction of men, but usually, well, the men sort of say, "Oh, I'm hard done by," but they're very easily led. It doesn't take two to tango. So the idea of the spider women who prey on men, I think, is more a projection onto noir. And again, two wonderful B movies, and I should say too that noir is interesting because the B movies are often better than the so-called A ones. It's one of those things where you can look at very cheap films that were made, what they referred to as Poverty Row Studios, and they are outstanding because often they did things that were a bit risky in terms of social analysis. And two films, one called Too Late for Tears, with one of my favourite female noir actors, Elizabeth Scott, and also one called Blonde Ice. I think Blonde Ice tells you exactly what it is. Leslie Brooks, who didn't have a stellar career. Both women are after money, and they destroy men. Elizabeth Scott shoots her husband accidentally. She was going to kill him, but then she decided not to, and then the gun dropped out of the purse, and he said, "What's that?" And she had to kill him. As you do. And, but in both films, the idea of money is to protect the woman, to give her some sense of security. It's the only weapon that she has, and this is not to say that it's good to go around killing people, but it's not that sense of this powerful, overwhelming woman who uses her sexuality to emasculate the males. It's far more complex than that. I realise I'm probably running short of time, but we'll just go on to the next one, which is, I think one of the great things about noir, just the lines. We have, it's said that noir is cynical, and I think that's to a certain extent, but it's more a reaction against a lot of what was going on in society. So things like, Murder My Love and How Do You Feel? This is in the opening scene, which is also wonderful visually because Dick Powell is blindfolded, not blindfolded, he's had something happen to his eyes, he's got a bandage over his eyes. The cop has the light in his face. You sort of think, hold on, take the bandage off and the moment in the feet. And they say, "How do you feel?" Like a duck in a shooting gallery. Another one of my favourites. When did you learn to cook? The first wife was the second cook in the third-rate joint on Ford Street. And then from the asphalt jungle, crime is a left-handed form of endeavour, of human endeavour. And then the Hollow Triumph, also known as the Scar. You're a bitter little lady. And Joan Bennett replies, "It's a bitter little world." The maid in Laura says, "I ain't afraid of cops. I was brought up to spit whenever I saw one." And in this world, you turn the other cheek and get hit with the bridge. So noir is full of these lines that are hard-boiled, they're hard cases. But there's always a vulnerability with the characters. And there's always a sense, and that's why I think that noir is not ultimately cynical, because there's a sense, not exactly of a promised land, but of a better place that people could get to if they didn't have all these desires about killing other people all the time. And of course, crime is fairly important. And we'll just finish up slide-wise with something that's good. We sometimes have a sense that Humphrey Bogart is noir, but, and this is very much just a very quick look at some of the actors, I suppose the more well-known ones who were involved in films noir. And you can see that there's a range of the top actors of the period. Mickey Rooney, surprisingly, features in quite a few noirs. And Frank Sinatra was in one called Suddenly, which, again, very young Frank Sinatra, very good in it. And Diana Durbin and Betty Grable, who were more known for their musical films, came up with excellent noirs. In fact, Betty Grable, that film, I Wake Up Screaming, which is a great title. It's got nothing to do with screaming, she does it actually in the film. But the performance that she gives is outstanding. And I'll finish up with a clip from a film called The Big Combo. The other thing, 50s noir, big comes into everything. The big piece, the big knife, the big combo. There's quite a few others as well. So just to give, this gives, I think, gives a sense of all that I've been talking about. So I'll just see the opening, the credits, and just a few minutes of that.
Please let me go.
You can't do that, Miss Nolan. Mr. Brown wants you should see the fight. It's only the third round.
I'll go back. Just let me go on myself.
Mr. Brown, is the man all right? We lost you for 2 minutes.
I promise I won't run away. Where will I go?
All right, let her go.
I've changed my mind. I don't want to see the lights. I'm hungry. Call again.
Call a kid.
Mr. Brown,
Mr. Brown says to keep her happy. Call a kid.
Shaw will perform a radio play. Sound effects will be a combination of live sound effects and ones done by the laptop. Hopefully it won't be too comical, the live one. This is a play that was first aired, as I said earlier, in 1947. It's called The Red Wind by Raymond Chandler. And let's begin.